Sing-Shong's Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint explores the relationship between writer, reader, and character. Last time we discussed what a character actually is. This time I want to go over how we as writers should interact with and create characters. Minor spoilers ahead, novel chapters are on the screen. Hi, I am the Person 76. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These were outlined in the Declaration of Independence as the inalienable rights of people. Nowadays, the UN has a page with about 30 of these, but 3 is a lot easier to work with. When writing a character, what are their inalienable rights? Clearly, characters do not have the right to life. Some even regularly dispose of theirs. Others can be killed simply as a way to advance the story. Liberty? Again, media is filled with characters that have lost their freedoms one way or another. Lost freedoms are always strong motivators. Pursuit of happiness? This is the one that hits the closest, although again this connects strongly to the liberty argument. Since established rights don't fit our characters, we will have to create our own. One of the most important arcs when examining the role of a writer is the Peaceland arc. The 6th main scenario brings our characters to Peaceland, a world full of small people and a single small constellation. Later, it is discovered that the world of Peaceland was written by the mangaka Asuka Ren, who appears during the scenario. They also meet one of her characters, Kyrgios. Asuka Ren's original vision of Peaceland was a brutally realistic world where all the characters were weak. However, because of external pressure from the manga industry, she created a powerful character, Kyrgios. The creation of Kyrgios ruined Peaceland, as Asuka Ren felt guilty for caving to pressure, and the story declined and stopped being published. This brings us to our first rule, honesty. Writers must be honest with their characters and stories, otherwise the characters can become bitter, like in Kyrgios' situation. While writing, we must be cognizant of our worlds and the place of each character in them. Part of honestly representing a character is not forcing them down a certain route. Every writer experiences a moment when their character doesn't do exactly what they expect. In the 5th scenario, when the party is fighting the disaster of floods, Shin Yu-sung with the 41st round, she stops attacking Yu Jung-huk and company. The presenter of the story, Paula Dokebi, controls her to continue fighting even though she doesn't want to. This totally violates the plausibility of the scenario and even forces the Bureau to get involved and arrest Paul. This is where pursuit of happiness comes in. While this is tied to honesty, I think it deserves its own rule. Characters must be free, not in the literal sense, but free to wish and to pursue their own story without intervention from the writer. So our second rule is that characters must be free to pursue their own story. This is not pursuit of happiness because a character's story doesn't always lead them in a good direction. Now, we have an equivalent for pursuit of happiness. Can we find an equivalent for life? As the story progresses, power trends away from being determined by coins, stats, or even stigmas. It is instead determined by stories. Much like in other media, the actions of a character throughout the story begin to matter more than where they came from before the story. Stories don't only become the source of a character's power, they are the life force of the character. Throughout the story, there are growing references to stories spilling out of them in the place of blood, or having their story cores damaged. As discussed in the previous video, characters only exist through story. This extends to the literal and omniscient reader, where they sustain damage in the form of their stories. This gives characters the right to a story. Characters without stories in media are usually shallow, one-dimensional, or just seen as extras. Possession of a story makes the text on the page into a character. Right to a story sounds kind of weak, so let's combine it with the previous one. This gives us the rules of an author. To give a character honesty, a story, and the will to pursue it. So, why should I care? In the end, isn't a character an amalgamation of the stories they take part in? They aren't real, so why do I have to act like they have rights? If you've read through Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, you should already have some idea of the answer. Characters can have immense impacts on the lives of real people. For Kim Dokcha, it was waves of survival. For me, it was Harry Potter, his Dark Materials, and Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. When you create a world, you take on responsibility for the fate of that world. Han Soo-young willingly writes the tragedy of the scenarios anew, restarting the cycle of Omniscient Reader and saving Kim Dokcha. She takes on the responsibility of all the pain and suffering that will result from her writing ways of survival. Nevertheless, she writes honestly. The characters that sprout from her writing bring Kim Dokja back from the brink, even after a suicide attempt. Of course, not every novel follows these rules. That doesn't even mean it will be a bad novel. But characters with honesty, life, and stories breathed into them will always be more lifelike and will have more impact than their storyless counterparts. So, the next time you create a world, remember you have a responsibility to its inhabitants for the good of the characters and those who will read them. There will probably be a few videos between this video and the How to Be a Reader video. I'm making a couple of less serious videos, one of which is in the works, and the other will be a sister video to the How to Be a Reader one. I will also be making a Tower of God video about selfishness sometime in the future, and might try out streaming. Thank you for watching. I'm ThePerson76.